play. There it goes. He lets one off. People start running. See that? See that? There it is. There's the gun. And 47 looks like...
Wait, stop what you're doing and watch the ice. That sound? Those aren't balloons. A high school hockey game just turned into a total nightmare in Rhode Island. You need to see how this unfolded and the massive political firestorm it just ignited.
Close contact with Jeffrey Epstein during his final decade? At The Economist, we have analyzed 1.4 million of Jeffrey Epstein's emails. We found the 500 figures who appear most often and analyzed their relationships with the sex offender, building a picture of the people in consistent contact with Epstein after he pled guilty to soliciting sex from him. This is a list of some of the most well-known figures that appear in Epstein's emails. David Stern, an aide to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Larry Summers, the former U.S. Treasury Secretary, and Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's associate who's been convicted of sex trafficking minors, were all in consistent contact with Epstein. Our data shows that some people were emailing with Epstein hundreds of times a month, like the physicist Lawrence Krauss and the banker Ariane de Rothschild. To understand just how much Epstein's network reached into almost every area of society, we've also divided the top 500 people by their industry. If you exclude Epstein's emails with his staff and business partners, 19% of messages with his top correspondents were with financiers, like Jess Staley, the former CEO of Barclays. 17% were in academia, like the immunologist Boris Nikolic. There were politicians like Peter Mandelson, Britain's former ambassador to the US, and Ehud Barak, Israel's former prime minister. And people from media and entertainment, including the publicist Peggy Siegel, the journalist Michael Wolff, and the filmmaker Woody Allen.
Look at this data map. This isn't just a list of names. It's an analysis of 1.4 million emails from the Epstein files. Did you catch the names scrolling by? We're talking about the former U.S. Treasury Secretary, physicists, and even a former CEO of Barclays. The sheer scale of this network is actually dizzying when you see it visualized like this. It's not just conspiracy talk anymore when you have major outlets like The Economist breaking down these consistent contacts after the 2008 plea. Pay attention to how they categorize these: 19% in finance, 17% in academia. It shows that this reached into every single corner of elite society. It makes you wonder how many of these people were actually in the dark versus being part of a system that just kept spinning. It's heavy stuff, and seeing it mapped out like a spider web really puts into perspective why there's so much noise around these files being released right now.
Shot. We don't have any confirmation of that, of course. But this is just the footage that's been released. I'm sure they have other angles and other people will release additional clips. But essentially, this is how it ends. He's continuing to shoot this individual, and then someone tries to strangle him.
Okay, look at the chaos in the stands. You see that guy in the white beanie? That's the suspect. The footage shows him pulling a weapon while players are literally mid-game. It's absolutely chilling to see families scrambling and players racing for cover on the ice. But did you notice the struggle at the end? Someone actually tried to intervene to stop him. This happened at 2:30 in the afternoon, a time when parents are just there to cheer on their kids. The mental state required to walk into a public arena like this is just beyond words. You can see the panic is visceral. People don't even know where the shots are coming from at first. It's a stark reminder of how fast a normal Saturday can turn into a tragedy. We need to really look at the security gaps here, because this footage is going to be studied for a long time.
She described that shooting suspect as her father. She came out of the police department behind me here in tears after presumably being interviewed by police.
My father was a shooter.
What happened?
Shot my family. And he's dead now.
What was the reasoning? Was there a family argument?
He has mental health issues.
This is heart-wrenching. That's the shooter's own daughter speaking to the press right after being interviewed by police. You can hear the absolute devastation in her voice. She's confirming her father was the shooter and mentions he had serious mental health issues. He was very sick, she says. It's a side of these stories we rarely get to see, so raw and unfiltered. It adds a whole different layer to the targeted family dispute theory the police are running with. Imagine the weight she's carrying right now, knowing her father is responsible for this while also grieving him. It really underscores the massive crisis we're facing with untreated mental health issues in this country. When the family knows someone is a ticking time bomb but can't stop the explosion, everyone loses.
We look at what happened in Venezuela, for example. It is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And
now let's pivot to this moment from Munich. This is AOC talking about Maduro in Venezuela, and it's creating quite the stir. Notice her phrasing here. She's arguing that we can't just kidnap a head of state, regardless of their democratic standing. The backlash is coming from people pointing out that her geography might be a bit fuzzy, but the bigger point is the political divide on foreign policy. Trump was quick to jump on this, calling it a bad look for the country. Whether you agree with her or not, the timing of these comments at a major international summit is why this is blowing up. It's these specific clips that are fueling the incompetence narrative being pushed by the right. You can see her trying to navigate a very complex geopolitical question, but the delivery is what's getting roasted.
The list also contains at least 18 current or former billionaires, including Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. All of them were in touch with Epstein after his plea admitting to sex offenses in 2008. Most of Epstein's correspondents say they didn't know about the scale of his crimes. In such a vast data dump, the quantity of emails alone doesn't give you the full picture of the nature of their relationships. So we mapped the number of emails sent and received. Ariane de Rothschild sent many more emails to Epstein than she received. Lawrence Krauss and Epstein sent similar numbers of emails to each other. Some people received far more emails than they sent, like Bill Gates, who was bombarded by messages between 2014 and 2016 and replied to relatively few. He was, however, happy to meet Epstein in person on a number of occasions.
Back to the data. Look at the frequency of these interactions. They're highlighting people who were bombarded by emails versus those who replied. Bill Gates is the name everyone is hovering over here. The report mentions he met with Epstein multiple times despite the 2008 conviction. The visualization shows he received way more than he sent, but the meetings are what people are fixating on. This is why the transparency of the Epstein files is such a massive deal. It's about the degrees of separation between the world's most powerful people and a convicted sex offender. When you see names like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel on the same list, it shows that no one was outside of this orbit. It's a massive web of who knew what, and the data dump is finally starting to give us a clearer picture of the scale.
By the way, I watched AOC answering questions in Munich. This was not a good look for the United States. I watched Gavin Newsom answering questions in Munich, and this was a bad look for our country. These two people are incompetent. And at least Hillary's competent. She's just Trump deranged. She was so deranged. She is an angry woman, but I watched the other two.
Catch Trump's tone here on Air Force One. He's not holding back on AOC or Gavin Newsom. He calls them incompetent and says their performance in Munich was a disaster for the U.S. image. It's classic Trump rhetoric, but look at how he separates Hillary Clinton, calling her competent but deranged. This is high-level political theater happening at 30,000 feet. He's essentially setting the stage for the next election cycle by painting the current rising stars of the Democratic Party as unprepared for the world stage. It's interesting to see him focus so heavily on their answers to basic questions. This is the kind of clip that his base loves because it reinforces the idea that the other side doesn't know what they're doing. This story is moving fast, so make sure you're following for the latest updates. I'll see you in the next one.